Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. We're all smiles. It's a Friday. Why are we smiling? It's because we've got a couple of bodies in the door, gentlemen. Listen, Brian, we're going to obviously be talking about the arrivals and anyone who supports Celtic, but who also has social media presence, a profile, follows the comment section of our YouTube videos, for example, will know that there's a lot of frustration at the moment, Brian, about the lengthy time that it takes. And any suggestion that it's all right, everything's going to be all right on the night is normally met with, you're being a cheerleader. I think there's a balance to be struck here, Brian, between last summer where it was shooting fish in a barrel, bringing bodies in for the sake of bringing bodies in. I'm going to quote Brendan Rodgers, we could have had 9 bodies in on the first day of the transfer window, against where we are now, where it does seem to be like a titanic kind of shift, if you like. It's taking its time, but we are getting quality in, Brian.
Yeah, I think so. And it's always one of those interesting ones when it's a Celtic transfer window, because we've been stung before, right? So I think the anxiety's a bit more prominent than at other clubs. Because if you look at the business across the market, there's not been that much transfer activity in general. Like, there's not been loads of clubs signing loads of players. There's not been loads of movement at this stage across the board. And considering we've got what, 3 or 4 out the door and 2 in, that's not too bad, especially when I think that what these signings specifically have demonstrated is a bit of forward planning, which has been lacking for a long time. I'm hesitant to say strategy yet, but we're getting closer to it, I think. And look, if it's 2 days to go before the end of the transfer window and there's still no one in, then yeah, we'll be furious. We're already going to be asking why. But I think people have they're kind of going, oh, penny pinching board, same as always. We're not spending any money. We're not signing anybody. It says, well, we're still plenty of time. Like, we're still a bit away. Yeah, we'd have liked to come in earlier. But you never know what the reasons are. Maybe we're in a bidding war with other clubs over someone. Maybe the people are, negotiating with their families. Do they want to move to Glasgow? Do they want to go to this league? Is it worth it? What are the wages like? There's a lot of moving parts. Plus, we're also trying to get a bunch of players out. So it's all about balance. I'm confident that we'll get where we need to be by the end of this window. And I'm reassured that if we don't, there can be no excuses now. It's on Brendan, because he's leading the recruitment charge. So there'll be no ambiguity about it. We'll know who's failed and why they failed, or who succeeded and why they succeeded. So in a way, it's a bit simpler. It's just a bit of patience required, I think.
Right, I'm going to take that point and come to you with that, Chris, because it's a good one that Brian makes. We've been talking about it since last summer when it became clear. And I don't think we were looking for excuses, but we were trying to figure out why we got into the situation that we were in, where 9 new arrivals came in the door. And it was pretty clear, you didn't have to come out and say it, was pretty clear that Brendan Rodgers didn't rate some of those players, most of those players. I mean, Gustav Lagerbielke, use him as an example, right?
Yeah.
So he comes in, he barely kicks a ball, and listen, I don't know what kind of figures and data they've got at the club in terms of his training and his match data. I can't remember him having a particularly bad game, but it was pretty clear, Chris, that Brendan Rodgers didn't fancy him. It might have been an issue with his pace. So we've spent the entire season going on about that, and the fact that poor recruitment last summer could have cost us the league. Let's not forget, it was tight last season. We had to go on that run at the end of the campaign. He had to find a core group of players that he trusted in, who had the mentality, the winning mentality, and they got us over the line. And they got us over the line. A big part of that was Adam Ida as well, coming in the January. But we can't spend the entirety of last season going on about how poor the recruitment was, and the fact that Brendan didn't have the control, the guys coming in, to completely flip it now and say, right, we've seen what happens when Brendan's in control in January. You get one guy coming in permanently, one guy on loan. It's all about quality, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And look, it's the manager's prerogative to work with the players and sort of try and recruit the players that he wants. He wants to fit into a system, to adapt to the way he plays. When players are kind of foisted upon managers, look, sometimes it works out. I don't know any manager that would come into Celtic that wouldn't have been happy to have Henrik Larsson there, right? I mean, that's like, job done, easy. But every manager's got their own style, they've got their own identity. Brendan Rodgers is no different. We remember the way he played the first time he came into the club. You know, he likes a big forward, he likes somebody who can hold the ball up and bring other players in. He likes, wingers who can come inside and contribute with some goals as well. And, he likes to get the goals from midfield. So, for me, what he's trying to do is he's trying to bring in players who fit that identity and that system. Now, the fact is that he had to work with a number of players last season that he wouldn't have been involved in the recruitment. And that was evident with his comments, it was evident with his actions. Lagerbielke's the easy example, but he also didn't see a lot of opportunities for guys like Nawrocki. I know he was injury disrupted, but he never got the impression he had the confidence of the manager. And I think that's one of the reasons why Scales played so much. Similarly, bringing in guys on loan like Ida, who gave us that option, which was very much for me a Brendan Rodgers type of signing, big, strong, physical presence up front. A good contrast and a good foil for Kyogo. And again, I think that was a real mark of what Brendan was trying to do. Look, he was lucky enough to have guys like Joe Hart there, Carter Vickers there, Matt O'Reilly in the team. He's got his captain that he can continually rely on. And we know there's a great relationship between him and Callum McGregor. What he's had to do at the outset of this recruitment window is he's now got to not only kind of try and offload some of those guys that he just doesn't, as far as he's concerned, aren't going to play a part for the club. And I think Lagerbielke, I'm amazed he's still there, to be honest. But we've seen players going out. Bernabé's away, unlikely to come back. Rocco Vata, despite the opportunity that Brendan and the club put in front of him, is away. So fine, no issues.
You've forgotten the rules. You've forgotten the rules. I'm the one that brings up. I have to bring Rocco Vata up.
We're not allowed to bring up Rocco, but for me, I actually agree with that point. He's gone. He's done. Finished. I don't. You don't want to be at the club. You've got a good opportunity. You don't want to be at the club. I'm done with him. Fine. Off you go. Good luck to you. So he's getting players out the door, although amazingly James McCarthy's still hanging on, but O's gone and a few others. What he's had to do now is he's had to bring in not just players to replace that depth that we had with better quality, but he's also having to address some of those key positions that I don't think we've ever had either the requisite quality and certainly not the requisite depth. Goalkeeping, paramount. And look, we were all paranoid. Joe Hart's away. We've known about it for X amount of months that Joe's been leaving. But what he's done for me is a really shrewd bit of business in that position. He's brought in an established, experienced, international, playing week in, week out goalkeeper in Kasper Schmeichel. And listen, I've been listening to Acsom all season as well as being on it. Everybody's been crying out, no more projects, give us experience. You show me a player out there that's got more experience and is currently playing at the top of his game than Kasper Schmeichel. Look, the hell we age, and I can say that because I'm over 37, so I'm quite happy. I've been 39 for the last 4 years, so I'm quite happy.
Haven't we all?
Yeah, so for me, he's just a youngster. He's in the prime of his life, and he can go on into that job. But there's also a shrewd bit of business in the fact we've brought in Sinisalo, 22 years old, right at the outset of his career, has been on a good, and very productive loan at Exeter City. I think he played about 50 times, and he got 14 clean sheets. For a guy at 22 years old, right at the outset of his career, that's not bad, right? And you're pairing him up with a guy with the experience of Schmeichel. So you've got a sure thing in Kasper Schmeichel, but you've got a longer term. Okay, maybe he fits the project mold, but it's a project that's been done coupled with the experience. That's what we want. That's the hybrid balance model that we want. That's what we've been crying out for. We don't mind projects, but we want to marry them up with experience, and that's what we've done. So goalkeeping position, I can't see a negative in it. I mean, that might change in the first day of the season when Schmeichel drops a clanger, Sinisalo comes in and can he catch a ball? I mean, who knows, right? It could be yet another Barca situation. But I'm optimistic. I'm Mr. Optimism. So I believe that we've done a great bit of business in the goalkeeping. Now, that buys a wee bit of faith for me. That buys a wee bit of patience. Not much. I admit I'm with a lot of the fans when it comes down to it. There's positions that we know need strengthening. Left back, absolutely. We're probably hoping against hope that Matt O'Reilly will stay at least for another season, 6 months, whatever. But the realistic view, and certainly the view shared with the bulk of supporters, that he's probably going to go to a big club like Juventus or Atalanta. possibly some others that might come in for him. So that's another player that we really have to try and replace in some way, shape or form. We know Bernardo is likely to come in. That looks like the next one is going to follow. That's kind of just bringing us back to the position we were in last season. Similar with Ida. Ida's a bit tentative just now. We seem to have a manager that rates him down at Norwich, or at least is saying that. Is he saying that to bump the price up? Is he playing hardball with Celtic? Is he trying to force us into paying over the odds for him? For me, if he's a target that the manager wants, I think you might have to spend more money than maybe we would have expected to get him. But there's another benefit to doing that. Not only are you getting a player who's low risk because he's been at the club, knows his way about, has played with the bulk of the personnel, knows what the manager expectations are, you're keeping Brendan Rodgers happy as well. We all remember John McGinn. Don't like to go back to it. But that, for me, looked like the straw that broke the camel's back for Brendan. Was I had a target, he was achievable, club didn't back me and we didn't go out and get it. I know he did maybe not quite the same profile, but you don't want to kick off that spiralling downhill process again where Brendan identifies players that he wants and for whatever reason the club don't go to bat for him. So in summary, and I'll shut up in a minute, but in summary, for me, Brendan's earned the right to have a little bit of patience, but the patience is not exhaustive. There'll come a point where we'll start to see the first league game, the first games in Europe coming up. We'll start to see the end of the window coming up. And I think if we've not got the team in a position where they are demonstratively stronger than last year, then I think we'll have the right to say, okay, come on, what's going on? But for the moment, I'm like Brian. I'm cautiously optimistic about the process so far.
I'm going to bring up something you mentioned there about and I'll come to you, Brian, on this one. There's some great comments coming in. Keep them coming in relation to our new arrivals, those who have already departed the club. Who else should be shown the door and what else do we need to bring in? Obviously, it would have been tremendous to have it all in place before we go and fly off to America. That's not happened, right? There's a couple of guys who may join Schmeichel in getting a wee flight over there in the next week or so. We're going to be covering the game. Chris, you're going to have to remind me if it's Saturday morning or Sunday morning, but you and I are going to be doing the first one.
Yeah.
And
is
it early Saturday or early Sunday morning, right?
I think it's early Sunday morning, so yeah, it'll be a Saturday night. I'm not planning to go to bed before it, so the bags under these eyes will be down here somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And so we're going to be covering the games. It would have been good to see more new arrivals. However, you brought up the situation with and over the last couple of days, Brian, I've seen a lot of headlines in and around the story about Ida. Obviously, he's on a plane. He does that Instagram thing. People then start checking flights and all this kind of stuff. It's confirmed he's on a plane with Norwich. Where's he going? Belgium, I think, for a game. He plays that game. The manager discusses him afterwards. Right. How much different was that? Seriously, how much different was that to playing in our friendly game against Queen's Park? Now, I don't think anybody asked Brendan Rodgers the question after the game about the future of but if they had done, Brian, right, managers, wily old foxes that they are, would have been non-committal. They would have been non-committal in the response that they gave. So if Brendan Rodgers was asked about, after a friendly game against Queen's Park, he'd have given a similar kind of response. He would have gone on about him being his player, etc., etc. He needs to do this, he needs to do that. It's good for him to get a run out. He wouldn't have said, listen, it's the last time you're going to see him in a Celtic jersey. He's going to go to Genk next week. So I wasn't getting too excited about the whole Ida thing, playing for Norwich during the week there, Brian. What was your take on it?
Yeah, I'm not too concerned. By all accounts, he's told Norwich he wants to come back. Celtic have told Norwich they want to buy him. So it's probably just a matter of what price he's going to go for. They're probably asking for 8 or 9. You're probably offering them 50 pence and a Twix, and then somehow meet in the middle.
A voucher, a Celtic Superstore voucher, yeah.
Aye, for the store. So I imagine that's probably the situation. In terms of what was interesting is that there does seem to be a sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily a double standard, but there's a weird thing sometimes with fans, Celtic fans, where they were saying you shouldn't let go without a replacement. And you go, okay, I get that. But at the same token, we're saying we need to get rid of all these guys. And you go, well, you can't have it both ways. So we're getting offered, I think we spent 2.3 million on all. We got offered 4.5 plus add-ons. So made a healthy profit on him. There and then you take it, and then you keep looking for a replacement because you know you replace them anyway. Whereas people went bonkers when we kept Lagerbeck instead of getting rid of him because we were worried about Carter Vickers' injury. So you can't have it both ways. So you either go take the bid when it comes in and let them go, or you wait until somebody else comes in. But you can't really complain when they do either. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we all go on. I quite liked him. I don't think it's a great loss. I don't think he's, it hugely weakens the side, no him being there. I suspect we'll sign somebody young to be at the third backup. And then obviously I think Ida will come back and they've obviously Keel will be first choice. So yeah, it's a kind of interesting situation. The other thing that people need to think about as well, and I always see this stuff and it's like, I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to be like a bold defender or anything, but people go, oh, it's the board's fault. And you go, well, surely they give the budget to the recruitment team and they handle it. Like at some point, I don't know if Dermot Desmond's flying to have meals with players and sort them out, or so at some point you go, look, we need to allocate blame appropriately. If it's Brendan's fault, if it's the board's fault, if it's recruitment's fault, if it's players' fault, it can't all be just somebody's fault, because then you need to say, well, when things are going well, you need to give them credit as well. So if you know you're going to say, oh, the success Celtic is the board's fault, you can't also say everything that's going on is the board's fault. So that's what I mean about the weird, like, just kind of need to calm down a wee bit and sort of, I know we're all passionate about it, but sometimes I think the criticism's sort of, I don't know, a bit double-sided.
Well, it's a default position, Brian. I mean, I've been moaning about the board for 30 years. I remember when I used to read the fanzines, and as a young kid, 1987, 88, and you want to read about the football, all you're reading about is the board and the PLC. We have to go public and we need to build a new stadium. And by the way, it kind of politicised my approach to football in a sense, and I'm glad it did, because there's nothing like, for me, looking at a situation at the football club and trying to actually figure out who is the decision maker, Brian. So if you go back to last year, when we spent quite a bit of money, right? Some people might scoff at that. We spent quite a bit of money, but we spent it in the wrong way. So you've got a board here who are deciding, right, we're going to give you this as a budget. If you then go out and you spend 2.5 on home, 1.5 on Tilio, 2.1 on Yang, £1 million on Kwon, 4.3 on Navrosky, 3 million on Lagerbielk, 3.5 on Palma, 2.8 on Kuhn later on in the season, then it's not the board that signed the players. It's the board that's saying this is your budget. Now that's a fair amount of money. It's a fair amount of money.
And that's the thing that I think that it's where sometimes like things become easy targets. And actually, when you do that, you're kind of missing the problem. Like when the criticism's labelled the wrong way, it's valid criticism, but if you're aiming it in the wrong direction, I think sometimes you kind of miss the thing. And then just one quick point before I pass over. When we talk about transfers and the length of time it's taken, Matt O'Reilly's still at the club. Now, Juventus or Atletico Madrid, two of the most powerful, richest clubs in the world, are dragging their heels over signing him. There's got to be more complex. It's not that they're skint or can't afford it or don't want to pay the money. So there's all sorts of things involved. Now, he's on a pre-season flight with the team to America. He'll probably play. But he's not away yet. So I suspect he probably will go and we'll get good money for him. But these things do take time. Like other clubs don't want to sell the players, they want to negotiate, they want to hold on to them. There's a lot to be done. So I'm not saying give them an easy ride, but just like, see if it gets to this time in August, I'll be furious if we've not been signing a good applicant. And then I'll say, right, now you've... But again, I won't be going, oh, the board's fault we've not signed him. It'll be, well, who's in charge of recruitment? It's Rodgers in this case. So we need to look at him and why it's not come in. And I think that would be appropriate then. But at this stage, I don't know. I know we all like to moan, but it's Friday, you know.
Yeah.
Friday, my only moan is that we don't have Mr. Orr. Mr. Orr is doing
The Oracle.
Yeah, he is doing a whistle-stop tour of Scotland, apparently. We're getting the images sent to us. What I would say, like, so last season, we signed all those players, and they're all, listen, 4.3 still quite a lot of money for Celtic to shell out on a player. The flip side of that is it shouldn't be. That shouldn't be normalised. You know, £4, £5, £6 million should be the norm, I think, and we shouldn't be looking at it as being an outlier. If the board says, there's your budget, but this is where the difficulty comes in, I believe, and I'm not trying to stand up for the recruitment team last season. If the criteria in terms of wages that we're going to be offering players, the age bracket that they're going to be in, and the kind of maximum that we're going to spend on a single player is set by the board, then they need to take a share of that blame, because those acquisitions were not good enough last year. At some point during the season, obviously, as we know, the head of recruitment was moved on. He's not been replaced. Whose fault is that? Again, that's the board's fault. So there's certain elements of this that are definitely the board's fault. But now we're in a scenario, and I hope that we've pushed the envelope a bit, Chris, when it comes to the budgets in terms of wages and single buys. You know, we can't say every player that we sign has to be, you know, a maximum of £4 million, because we will not progress if that's the case.
Yeah, you absolutely hit the point I was going to make there, and it is, and something funnily enough, you mentioned Jim Law there, and who knew the Tower of Pisa was in Glasgow? I didn't know that. That was loving some of those pictures. But yeah, me and Jim a couple of weeks back, actually the first time I'd hosted the show, Jim, the sort of klaxon word that we kept coming back to was transparency, right? And we're talking about transparency into the process. And what you said there about the parameters, the criteria that's maybe being set by the board to the recruitment team, which is therefore having an impact on the calibre and the profile of players we're bringing in. If they're setting, and we don't know this, and this is the problem, this is where the lack of transparency really, it doesn't allow us to trust the process, because we don't know what the hell the process involves, because they won't share it. And we know football teams across the world will not necessarily go public with who their transfer targets are, because it bumps the price up and it gets other teams interested, and you know, it can unsettle players and clubs can get antsy about it. So that's fine. You keep that under wraps. That's important. That's you know, norm in football. But where's the harm in saying this is the type of player that we go for? This is the process. This is what the recruitment team does. This is what the manager. How the manager interacts with the recruitment team. These are the kind of requirements we set out, and we don't get any of that. So it's very hard for us to trust a process that we're getting no visibility into. So we can only judge it on the results. And last season, and actually the last two windows anyway, the results weren't good enough. They weren't good enough for the current manager. They weren't good enough for the performances on the park. We weren't living up to the standards we set as a club. Even when we were playing against what was, as it evidently turned out, was a really poor Rangers team, who, as we now find out, are built on shakier foundations than we ever thought. The point is that we never, you know, we based it on the results, and the results from the recruitment windows weren't good enough. So you have to think about, well, if the board are saying, here's a top-end budget, but part of our objective is to recoup or generate, you know, future revenue from these players. So your criteria is players under the age of 24, players who have a transfer cap of, say, no more than 8 million, players who will only take, you know, any one of those tiers of wages that we have. So if they're this Carabao player, they're, you know, 10 grand and under, then maybe 10 to 20 grand, and then maybe 20 grand above. So the recruitment team, whatever their capability, would have to go out and work within those parameters, and then deliver the manager maybe a series of a short list of players that fit that criteria. So you're keeping the board happy, you're trying to keep the manager happy. So it might be a really thankless, rough task for the recruitment team, and therefore maybe we're giving the recruitment team a harder time than they deserve. But the problem is we don't have insight into that process. So we're making assumptions, and we're making guesses, and we're trying to figure out, you know, how is this? Why did that player come in? In what way is that player meeting the requirements based on what we're seeing on the park? So it's not that we necessarily were always going against the board. It's not that we're always having a downer on the recruitment team. It's not that we're always necessarily blaming the manager. Frankly, all we can do is base it on what we're seeing. And if the players that are coming in on more money than probably the three of us will ever make in our lifetime, you know, and they don't do it on the pitch, I think we're entitled to have a wee moan about that, to be honest. I think we're entitled to moan. But the club could, if they would just engage a bit more with the fans, if they would engage a little bit more with the fan media like ourselves, and maybe the mainstream media as well, and say, look, this is the process. These are even if they come out and say, these are the restrictions we're working in, they buy themselves time. They buy themselves a wee bit more support, and people say, didn't know that. Okay, now we get it. Do you know what? Yeah, you're right. I kind of understand the challenges that they might be facing. But the fact they don't do that, well, they're leaving the door open for all the criticism that comes their way.
It feels like it's a balancing act, doesn't it? So, like, I can't really disagree with anything you said. But I suppose, just to play devil's advocate for the sake of the discussion,
I knew it when you said you couldn't disagree with anything I said there. You were going to come in with a but. I knew it.
It's not disagree. It's just to say. So, like, if you look at the criteria, right, which is madness, right, and that's the point when you get to in a second. But if you look like Matt O'Reilly, Jota, Abada, when they all came in, we signed them. They were young, under a certain amount, under a certain. So they fitted that criteria, and it worked. Now, whether that was the criteria that the recruitment team were sent out to get, or that was just the player they got and they went, "Oh, this works." So naturally, they're going to go try and do that again. The problem comes in, and this is where we do agree, is if you go, right, that's the criteria, try and get another Matt O'Reilly, another Jota, another Abada in, and you're getting a Tilio and a Yang instead, then somebody in the recruitment team or the manager has to then say, look, clearly this isn't working, we need to step outside the box a bit and get a Carter Vickers loan to buy, or get a Starfelt in. So it's got to be, so I understand, but there's always going to be parameters. Like, they're not going to go, right, there's the money, spend it how you wish, because you can't, because of the type of league we're in, because the type of players we need to identify. That's just a sad reality, and it's a reality we all hate, but you've got to be able to go, right, we can try that, and we can get us, that's where we'll start. But if it's not working, we need to be able to expand that search, and that's where I feel, that's where criticism's valid.
Yeah,
because then that's a common sense approach. Because then you should be saying, well, look, clearly we'll not get the players, we need to think outside the box. And I suspect that's probably what's going to happen this season. So for every Schmeichel who is outside the box, we'll save him transfer money, so pay him bigger wages. You then get the 22-year-old low wages project player that fits the recruitment strategy. So I think we'll be smarter about it this season, but I don't think we should kid ourselves that we'll ever really deviate that much, if I'm honest.
See, the thing, we're talking about project, it became a bad word at some point over the last few years. Sinisalo is for me, he is the epitome of what a project should be. He's coming in, he's got his mentor, he's going to get some game time over the next 2 years, and then there'll come a point where he's ready to take the gloves and he'll be the first choice goalie. So when you bring in a project player, let's use Home. I wasn't being critically Home. Brendan Rodgers has had a few things to say about him. When I seen him coming in as a 19-year-old from Norway, with the best part of 100 games under his belt, £2.5 million, not an unsubstantial fee for a guy from that league at that age. I thought to myself, right, so he is he is a project player, but who's he here to replace? Did he do enough in season one to suggest he's going to do that? Brendan Rodgers doesn't think so, going by what he said. So I don't disagree with it. I'm like Brian. I think that, on paper, that looks great. You bring in a guy, he's going to be replacing him. It's succession planning. And somewhere along the line, we called them development players or project players. But when it became punts, almost just like stabs in the dark, that's when it started to become really frustrating. Where we're bringing in guys who were clearly not to the level. I mean, I was going through some images yesterday when I was doing some of my shorts for the socials, and I came across the images that Celtic sent of us of a new kit launch a few years ago, and it was sorrow. And that big smile was on my screen, and I'm looking at the guy, and I'm going, "It's not your fault, mate. It's not your fault. We tried to do it on the cheap," and it was a stab in the dark. Now, I'm a great believer in the fact that specific knowledge of a market is absolutely key. And Ange Postecoglou, without that knowledge that he had of the Japanese market, we're talking about a different tenure entirely. What it looks like here is Brendan Rodgers. What market does Brendan know? He knows the English market, right? So you look at last season, again, going back to a point Brian made, we probably will never know all the details. Was Nat Phillips one of Brendan's signings? Probably. He came from Liverpool. Adam Ida, well, we know he was, because Ida said that Brendan phoned his agent on the Monday, signed on the Wednesday, and he comes from Norwich. So we know Brendan is signing players. Kasper Schmeichel, we never signed him from the English league, but he played most of his career there. Sinisalo, we signed him from Aston Villa, even though he's been obviously on loan here and there. So it looks as though that specific knowledge that Brendan has is coming into play. The one thing that I wish we would be better at we should be absolutely the best at in our field, in our class, is being able to identify players where it's not an agent coming to you and saying, I've got a left back, or you going to them and saying, I need a left back. And it's not the specific knowledge of the manager. It's where your recruitment team, Chris, right, says, okay, last week you asked me to present you with some options for left back, and this is the criteria you gave me. And these are the best left backs available right now within that set of parameters, right? That's not been happening. I'm sorry, that has not been happening, because if you sign a 19-year-old for 2.5, right, you should be able to sign a 19-year-old who's going to make a dent. And Holmes not done that. So I think we've been kind of taking stabs in the dark. Agents have been coming to us. We've been going to them. We've been doing the deals. It's not been as specific and it's not been as focused as it should be.
Yeah, I would agree. I think actually what you described there, I think it's the reverse in some cases is happening. I think the way recruitment should work is a manager should go to the recruitment team and say, here's the criteria of the type of player that I want. And the recruitment team should then go and identify the targets, get the values, and then it should be a job for both the manager and the recruitment team to go to the board and say, there's the funds we need to secure this player, but this is the guy that we want. That for me is the ideal model. That's what, ideal in the sense that the board then grants the fees, which, our board is never guaranteed, but that's what you should have. And you should have a first, second, and third choice option potentially, but it should be the manager that sets the criteria and sets the requirements. The recruitment team shouldn't be working under restrictions set by the board. Now, we don't know if that's happening, but we suspect that's the way it's happening. And I don't think that's an effective way to progress a football club on the park. I really don't. I think that's, probably good business model, great news for shareholders. You're maximising your ongoing revenue, you're signing players, selling them on. Yeah, brilliant. Good on you guys. Enjoy it. Fantastic. As a fan, I want to see what happens. I want to see that progression on the park. I want to see the fruits of labour. All of our supporters in some way, shape or form, whether they're season ticket holders, whether the guys to go to the occasional games, whether they buy the merchandise, we pump millions of quid into that club. And we want to see it reflected, not in the shareholders' pockets, but on the park. And you need a model which allows a manager to do that and deliver for the fans and deliver for success, the success of the football team. Know the club. The club can look after that in all sorts of different ways. But you talked a lot about there about Brendan's comments to, I think where he referred to Home and Bosun Lawal. I was listening full enough to Big John, and before I say anything about Big John, I've got a disclaimer I need to read out, which means that John's health, personal information, activities and all that sort of stuff is now not a matter of public record, and I am not allowed to speak about it, so therefore will not be referring to any of his medical conditions going forward.
He took that host chair, Brian. He took the host position and he ran with it last week, did Chris?
Listen, Paul, I was on with him. There was no living with him. Honestly, he gave him an inch. He's 2 mile. He was a megalomaniac.
Power went in my head. But yeah, Paul, honestly, Big John slaughtered me for it, so I got it in the neck. So yeah, I'll be watching my P's and Q's when it comes.
That just means he likes you, Chris. That just means he likes you.
I know, well, absolutely. He's a good man. But yeah, you talk about, Brendan coming out and talking about the two young players, and, two who I think have performed particularly well in the first couple of games of pre-season. Lawal came up from a pretty successful period at Fleetwood as well. And a lot of people were kind of a bit like, why is he doing that? Why is he, is that having a go at the players? I actually took I had a different take on it. I thought that was great work by the manager. I thought the manager was saying, there's levels that you need to be at to beat this football club. And I saw it as him laying down the challenge, not criticising them for anything they've done at this point, but just reinforcing that if you want to make it, here's your opportunity, but this is what you've got to do to meet that mark. And I really liked hearing him say that. Honestly, I thought that was one of the best things I've heard Brendan Rodgers do since he came back, was to say, you might think you've got quality, you might have a fair amount of talent, but it takes more to be a Celtic player. Lay down the challenge, go and bring it up. And I thought that was, I really liked that. So I'm hoping that both the players will take that and actually try and elevate their game in a way that he expects them to, and take the opportunity. So for me, it wasn't a criticism. It was, there's the challenge I'm laying down to not just those two players, but every player at the club. You have to play to a certain standard, and it has to be your mentality, your work rate, your ethic, the way you conduct yourself, and what you do on the park. So I thought that was great. So yeah, for me, I think there's we're in a position. We're in a strong position at the moment. We have got rivals who don't seem to be able to show any metal or steely determination at the moment.
I saw what you did there.
Just they're all good words. But the point is that we're in a strong position, but we've got to go and build on a position of strength. We can't just maintain the status quo and be as kind of where we were last season, where we allowed them back in and made it a title race. We want to be looking at Europe. We want to be looking at this newer format and saying, how do we go out there and then give ourselves a really good show? We might not qualify, but we don't want to be on the end of hammerings. We want to actually be out there and competing. And to do that, you need the players there to elevate their game and play to the manager's standards. And you need recruits coming in that are of a requisite quality to build on the strong foundations we've got at the club.
The point you make there about the message that Brendan Rodgers has actually given there, it could well be a message that is for the ears of the 9 young guys that are on that US trip, Chris, who are maybe looking at the performances, particularly a while, I think, of the 2 friendlies and also home, and thinking these guys are doing great. And then Brendan comes along and says, no, you actually need to elevate your performances above that. And I think, yeah, it would work really well if you're the right type of player, because some guys don't like criticism. They don't like the challenge,
That's what I think separates the guys who've got a future at the club and the ones that don't, right? I mean, look, apologies, I'll bring him up one last time, but it's just to make this point. Rocco Vata was given an opportunity that I guarantee that every single person that's on the chat and everybody that's on this, I know, but even the 3 of us, if Brendan Rodgers was to turn around to us at the age Rocco Vata's at and said, you're going to get in the first team, you're going to be in the first team, you're going to be 3rd choice striker, but you'll get your opportunity, you'll get your chance on the park. That's how much I rate you. I cannot imagine any of us turning that down. I know that the money that he's getting down at Watford will eclipse what he's getting at Celtic, but I mean, at that age, go and do a job for Celtic. Show that you can play for the club that you supposedly love. Do the best job you can. And you know what? See that big move that you've just got? You'll get a better move a couple of years down the line. But earn your stripes first. Do it here. I will never understand the mentality of a young guy like that who is given that kind of hook to stay and says, no, that's not enough for me. If that's your attitude, don't want you in the club. Sorry, see you later. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Chris has brought up Vata twice. He's passed my lips simply to refer to the point you're making, Chris, so I'm not taking the blame. But here's the thing, I'm going to throw it out there, right? We're all Celtic daft, every one of us, right? Regardless of your age, regardless if you're 19 or whatever, right? If I've got 2 offers on the table, and I'm going to answer the question. I want you to let me know your honest answers in the comments. If you've got 2 offers on the table for the job that you work in, be that media or, painting fences or laying bricks, whatever it is, steelworks, just to go back to Chris's point, whatever arena you work in, and you are offered between 8 and 10 grand a week from Celtic to go and do that job, or you're offered between 20 and 25 grand from a different company to do that job, do you go to Celtic? Do you go? Let me know, right? Because I'm just thinking it's a brutal reality of modern football that we cannot compete at. When we're talking about an 18 or a 19-year-old academy graduate, we won't go above a certain point when it comes to the money being offered. And even if they're a generational talent, I'm thinking of Ben Doak, I'm thinking of others that have come through the ranks recently, we will not go above. There's a ceiling, right? So realistically, within your field of employment, if you're offered 8 to 10 to do that job for Celtic, or 20 to 25 to go down to a firm in Watford and do it, which one do you do it? Which one do you choose? Let me know in the comments. Be honest about it. Paul Galante, someone slept in. Who slept in, guys?
Oh, do you know I saw this? It was Jungle Lion when they get up first on the comments today.
Somebody slept in.
Paul got
Here
in.
he is. Here he is. He came in all the way from Dublin, but he wasn't first. Nice one. There we go. And it just shows there's no favouritism. Celtic follower, afternoon all. I suspect Bernardo will be next edition, but I am not holding much hope of an Ida deal. Hopefully, we are looking at several other areas to fill with quality, and it's only a matter of time. Guys, I'm going to throw this one out at you, right? Who was an ever-present for Celtic last season? Brian, who
Not
played every
really.
game? Only one player played in every game. Never started every game. He played in every game.
Greg Taylor?
No.
No.
Back to you, Brian. Back to you. We'll see if there's anybody in the comment section coming in with the answer.
It wasn't he Scales, was it?
Tony Cassidy got it. It was Kyogo. Right.
Kyogo.
So let's bring up Kyogo, right? He played in every single game for Celtic.
He played in every game, right? Yeah, I was trying to think who started. I was going to say, he never started in game.
He did. He came on as a substitute in every game. That's right. I remember reading that, actually.
Yeah.
I hadn't realised it.
So Joe Hart was sent off against Livingston and he was suspended for the following game. So Kyogo was the only ever present in the Celtic squad last season. Now that goes against the discussion point around in the narrative around the fact that A, he's not suited to Brendan Rodgers' team, Brian, or B, Brendan Rodgers doesn't fancy him, one or the other. It kind of flies against that, doesn't it? But he's at an age now, 29 years of age, where what did we buy Kyogo for? 4.3 million quid. In terms of the potential to make a hell of a lot of money off of Kyogo, that's diminishing due to his age. We get that, right? Is he the first choice? Because we're constantly talking about you bring in Ida, you've got first choice Kyogo, second choice Ida, and then you're maybe looking at someone for third choice. If we bring in Ida, Brian, I'm going to ask you the question: is Ida the first choice?
No, I think it. I think it depends on two things. I think it depends on the opponent and the way who we sign. So I think that where Kyogo struggled a little bit at times was because people weren't finding him. Whereas under Angie, the new system that suited, get the balls, low crosses, Kyogo's going to get the end of it. That was kind of it. In Brendan's system was a bit more freedom and it didn't quite work at times. So it really depends what the setup is. But I suspect like there'll be games in Europe where he play Ida just for his physicality. But I think that with Kyogo, his movement's so good that against any opponent, he can find that space if we can find him. So I think just you're going to start him more. He's going to be first choice because even a Kyogo that's not performing could still come up with something magical that no one's thought about or make that move that draws less space for another player. And then they may just rotate it so that we have an Ida. But I just think to sign a player to replace Kyogo, it'd be far out with their budget. And I just think as much as I like Ida, I think he's very different from Kyogo. And it's not that you're saying well, one's better than the other. I just think Kyogo's so different and so sort of it's like Hatate. It's like an example with Hatate as well. There's times where he's murdered defensively. Like he kind of switches off a bit, doesn't he? He's not the greatest presser. But he's so good when he's on the ball that you can't not play him. You kind of have to have him in because that magic you can't buy. You can buy the other stuff like Bernardo. He gives you everything off the ball. It maybe has to do a lot of work on the ball. Adam Ida's kind of like the version of that with Kyogo. And I think that the games that suit the Bernardo Ida type player, but the games where you just need that wee bit of magic, that wee bit of inspiration that suits your Kyogo and your Hatate type player. So yeah, long answer to a short question, but yeah, Kyogo for me.
Yeah,
you're nodding. You agree with it.
I thought that was 100% spot on. But there's the way I would frame it is Kyogo is your first choice plan A striker. Ida is your first choice plan B striker. Plan A will work for the bulk of the season, particularly domestically, because we're always on the front foot, we're attacking. But we know, and as we saw last season, I think Kilmarnock was the best example. There are games and opponents where you need that plan B, and when you need that plan B, Ida is absolutely invaluable, and he proved it because I'm hesitant to say he won the game on his own, but he had such a meaningful contribution in that game that it enabled us to play a way that we hadn't played against Kilmarnock that whole season. He just found a way to unlock the defence, and that's why I think getting Ida or a similar type of player in is so important. You need a foil for Kyogo when plan A gets to the point where it's not working. And we will have that. And we probably have it in Europe on occasion. But for me, Kyogo, first choice, plan A. When you need a plan B, Ida comes in. And I would say he's no less valuable in that sense. But to Brian's point, and I could not agree more, Kyogo is worth far more on the pitch to us than he is in any sort of sale we would get for him at this point. He is worth far, far more. If we get another 3 years out of Kyogo, that will benefit us far more than even a 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 million fee. It really would.
It's like McGregor, isn't it? It's like the amount of money you'd have to pay to sign a player of McGregor's quality. We couldn't afford it. So keep him there, and then hopefully maybe he starts to fade. They can get someone that can sort of replace him.
They might be at the club already, Brian. I hope
this is what you're hoping. And going back to Chris's point about the comments Rogers made about Halal and home. That was good. I love that from him because I totally agree. I think if you react bad like that, you shouldn't be at the club. And he is a guy who's worked. You can't refer to Rogers as an elite manager, maybe he can, but he certainly worked with elite players at an elite level, and he knows the qualities that's going to be successful. And the fact he's calling them out publicly, I think, means he sees something in them that he wants them to react to. Because otherwise, he'd just tell them behind the scenes. He would just say, "Oh yeah, young lads are doing great. We'll see the chances." But I think calling them out basically shows them, "Look, I've got you in the public eye. There's something here. We could work together if you just do that bit extra work." And then maybe that's another thing with the transfers. Maybe he's genuinely holding off to see hold on a second. Maybe if I can save a few million on a midfielder, I can get that extra for a defender or a left back, which this one's comment in the comment section. That is a position we need to prioritise next, left back and centre back. But so we don't quite know either. It could be the case he's going, "Well, hold on a minute, have I got a player in? Oh wow, where if I get him and Bernardo in, maybe don't need another one in. And maybe that 3 or 4 million can get spent towards a left back or a centre back." We simply don't know at this stage. And I think that's where we have to just be a wee bit patient and not really trust the process, because a lot of us defending the logistics of why they set that process up. I totally disagree with that process being in place. I think it's nonsense. It doesn't work. I think you should have like a director of football, strong recruitment team, and you should sign players that fit the club as opposed to trying to make the club fit the player. Same with managers. So I think it's totally wrong, but I just see the logic why they're doing it. But the sort of flip of that is, if it's all on Brendan, it's quite a lot to ask as well. But if it is, we need to trust him, that he knows our player, he knows what he wants, and we just have to hope he gets it.
Yeah, it is a lot to ask, Brian. Gone are the days when Jockstein and Sean Fallon would jump in a car 3 times a week and go and watch football players. That shouldn't be happening. Brendan shouldn't be that intrinsically involved in the recruitment process throughout the summer transfer window. His main focus should be on preparing the squad of players that he's got for the fixtures that are upcoming. Now, we've got about 15 minutes left, and we've asked a few questions today. Obviously, the tagline is there, which position is the next priority? And there's been a few other discussion points. So I've got 34 highlighted comments. Will your comment be read out? Who knows? First one, just for everybody who is joining Acsom on a daily basis. Yes, we always go out at 12:30 on the weekdays. Every time we've got a game, it's 30 minutes before the game. We do the 15-minute halftime, and we also do the 30 minutes after the game. And then on a Friday night, we have a show called This Is Acsom. I'm going to use this just for a little, diversion for a moment, for Chris to tell us about his experience with Murdo McLeod on Wednesday. Chris, you know what I love, right? I love the fact that you have absolutely embraced Acsom. You're phoning players, you're away to meet them in coffee shops, you're picking them up from train stations, and you're getting to know them. Tell us a wee bit about your experience with Murdo and what we should expect tonight at 6 o'clock.
It's genuinely surreal. But listen, it's not something I'll ever take for granted, because I revert back to being 12 years old and you're seeing your heroes. So you try and keep a professional demeanour, but when you're sitting in a car with Murdo McLeod, for goodness sakes, and Murdo's not only giving you stories about his career and different things that you remember, he's also giving me directions to get me there. He's like the world's best driving instructor. It was like sitting there with my dad's, but my dad's Murdo McLeod. It was fantastic. Anyone that knows me knows that my sense of direction is hopeless, right? I mean, I could get lost in my own house. I'm that bad. If I didn't have a sat nav, honestly, I would have, me and Murdo, as he was joking about, funnily enough, would have ended up in Edinburgh somewhere. So It was
Do you ever,
brilliant.
Chris, do you ever walk out a shop in a shopping centre and go back the same way you've come? Do you ever do that?
Yeah, I've done that before. Yeah, try and retrace.
Easy mistake.
You know?
Easy mistake to make. Yeah,
absolutely. But it's no. I mean, look, there's something. It's a genuine privilege to be around someone like Murdo McLeod. And by the way, and I'm going to put my head above the parapet here. And anyone wants to take shots, feel free. But it was also a pleasure to be there with Hugh Keevins. Now, Hugh Keevins, I know he's a divisive figure, and I get why. What I would say to everybody who hasn't had the pleasure of meeting Hugh is that within 2 minutes of his company, you see the person that sits behind the persona, and it is a genuine pleasure. He is as passionate as anyone I've ever spoken to about Scottish football, the history, and in Celtic as well. Now, look, he's in a position where he's on a public platform, mainstream media, and he plays a character, right? He's pretty much admitted it. Whether you agree with that or not, it's fine. But come on, let's not be so fragile that we wouldn't watch the guy contribute to a show focused on an absolute Celtic legend, Murdo McLeod. And for me, what I saw was a man of integrity, a man of affection. In fact, his friendship and his affection for Murdo was quite affecting, even just sitting there and being in proximity to it. And honestly, he was... It was amazing to see the two of them, and they bounced off each other really well, and hopefully that shows through on the show when it airs tonight. But being around Murdo, after the years he's had with really bad, and I can't emphasise how serious the health issue that Murdo had was. There was at one point where I think, and I had the pleasure of meeting Mary, his wife, but there was one point where I believe she was told that there might not have been anything they could do to save him. And I tell you, having spent time in his company, what out of the obvious tragedy, what a tragedy that would have been for people like myself and everybody that's going to get the pleasure to listen to him and eventually read his book when it comes out, because he has got so many memories and so much. There's so much that he can tell, so many stories, so many experiences that he's had. And there's a point, I mean, you think back to some of the moments that Celtic were part of in the late 70s, all through the 80s, that period of success we had. And Murdo is almost at the forefront of all of them. Mm-hmm. And that's just as a player. And then he comes back again, 1998, in an hour of need, when Rangers have had 9 in a row. Back in the days when the stadium wasn't falling apart. Sorry, I need to stop that. But you don't. but the point is that he comes back again as a coach this time, builds up that rapport with Wim Jansen, and he stops the Rangers getting the 10 in a row. Any one of the moments that Murdo was involved in would have been some legacy for any player, and he's got about 5 or 6 or 7. Yeah. And he is so sharp. He's so, I mean, the biggest pleasure I had for the whole day was when I first laid eyes on Murdo, and after knowing about his health struggles, I thought, how diminished might it be? And you know what? Striding up there, voice is exactly the same, hasn't changed, having jokes, telling stuff, absolutely brilliant. And it was honestly a genuine privilege to meet both him and Mary and indeed Hugh. And honestly, I think, see, when the book comes out, I think the stories in it are just going to be fantastic, really. And me and Asim, we didn't want the session to end. Honestly, if we could have stayed there all day, I actually wanted to set a camera up in the car. And then I had the privilege again driving him home, and he did exactly the same thing again. He took me routes I've never been before and got me there. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. Delighted for him. So glad his health is in such good shape. And I'm really looking forward. I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say in the show tonight. I'll probably be hiding behind the couch because I'm the one talking to him, being Asim. Thank goodness I had Asim there, because Asim's a consummate professional, whereas I was probably completely fanboying it. But yeah, please, I would urge anybody, whatever your opinion on, Hugh or even Murdo themselves, please don't miss out on hearing some of what he's got to say, because it is really amazing content.
Yep, I'm looking. Well, I've had a sneak peek, of course. However, what I would say in relation to that, this is Murdo's episode. He's brought along Hugh. Hugh's his pal. He supported him through his darkest days, of course. And obviously, watch it with a set of peepers that is the fact that Hugh was the biographer for Tommy Burns, Danny McGrain, and Murdo McLeod. Watch it from that perspective, through that prism. That's what I'm going to say, and you'll enjoy it a lot more than if you watch it through the prism that Chris talks about, the persona, some might say caricature of the radio personality.
Paul John, just one last point on this, if I can make it, because I don't think it made it to the broadcast, where Hugh told a story about one of his famous predictions and the impact it had on his family. So Hugh, as we know, is notorious, I would say, for his predictions. But this was a story that he repeated to me. I'd heard it before, but he repeated. But it's a brilliant insight into the type of character he is. So he made a prediction that Rangers were going to win a cup final. I don't know what one it was, but they're going to win the cup final as opposed to Celtic. And he's at home, and gets chap at the door, and it's his brother. And his brother, never turned up at his door. This is not a normal thing. So immediately Hugh said, "Oh God, is it mum? Is his mother?" And Hugh, his brother said, "No, it's not mum. He says, "We better come in." And then his brother turns to him and said, "Yeah, it's mum." I said, "I just actually," because Hugh's thinking, his mum's not well or something's happened. And his brother turns to Hugh without missing a beat, and he says, "Yeah, mum heard what you said on the radio today. You've not got in the house for a while yet." And that just that for me sums up. So please see past the mic, see past the caricature. All I'm going to say is he's one of us, genuinely, and I mean that. And it's but he's just watch it.
Watch it. Yeah, make your mind up. Listen, Brian is going to nip away bang on 1:30, but I'm going to run through some of these comments because obviously it is a thriving community that we have on Acsom, and I want you to have your say. Even if Chris drops out and leaves me on my own, I'm going to talk to you guys. Bobby Chariot, left back, a left centre back, a winger, centre mid, and a striker. Try to think, is there any more? Over and above Bernardo and Ida, I agree with you, Bobby, are all vital if we want to make a fist of it in Europe. I totally agree with that. We've got Celtic follower coming in on the YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube and you haven't yet subscribed, get subscribing to the channel. Big content coming on a Friday night. That's our Friday night show from Barrafield to the Barrowlands. Yes, we're going to have a lot of ex-Celtic players, coaches, and those who have worked at the club, but we're also going to have others with a Celtic state of mind, be that musicians, actors, playwrights, comedians, etc. Celtic follower, we are 3 players down from last season in Bernardo, Ida and O. Fill those gaps with quality and we are back at the starting line to improve the squad. Failure to do so wouldn't be acceptable to the fans. That's what we're kind of getting that vibe. Martin Clark, with Captain Caveman, hopefully we get some quality players in. Let's do something in Europe for a change. Remember the good old days. Come on, Celtic. Well, I remember the good old days of the likes of Murdo MacLeod, and you think 10 men won the league. You think the 1980 Scottish Cup final riot. You think the 100th Scottish Cup final, 85, Love Street, 1986. And then, of course, it comes back to stop the 10. 5 pivotal moments in the history of the Celtic Football Club, and Murdo MacLeod was part of all of them. Stephen Donnelly, afternoon all, goalie position sorted. Now left back, centre half, getting a lot of people saying that. Work from the back. Yeah, absolutely. And in the meantime, Stephen, if you get Bernardo and Ida over the line, then great. And we've also got a lot of chat coming in about Matt O'Reilly as well. Craig, painting fences. It's because it's the summer, mate, and that is one of the big jobs on my to-do list when I turned round to try and think of a job, and that is my job this summer, painting fences. That's why I brought that one up. Stay at Celtic for less money and less opportunities, or go elsewhere and give your career the best chance. It's a no-brainer, says your ma. We've also got that. You sound like my son, your ma, right? Says it to me all the time. Celtic champions, most will take the greater money. In modern football, you're right. Most will take the more money. Russell comes in though. Russell, I used to speak to you on a regular basis when you worked in a Celtic shop. I worked in retail for Celtic when better sales jobs were available. By the way, I bet you there are thousands of Celtic fans who would work for Celtic over a bigger, more paid, highly paid job. I bet you there are. Green Lichty, my missus would kill me if I said no to the money.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, you've always got that. Dave McSorley, I go to Celtic. Loving my life. Is that Brian away? Brian, great to see you, pal. I'll see you again next week.
Cheers, lads.
Nice one. Cheers, pal. But I think what you've got to do is be realistic, but you've also got to look at certain characters in the past, right? Yeah. Certain characters in the past be that a player or otherwise, who only wanted to work or play for Celtic, Chris. And there are many fans out there, and there are many players out there who absolutely would, there you go, I'd have played for Celtic. So would have I, Stephen, but they would never have let me play. That's the problem. But the one I'm going to bring up here, someone has mentioned this. By the way, Hoopy, no one sniped. No one has sniped. So it must be a YouTube thing. No one's been on the snipe. We've not had an opportunity to do that. And what I would say is Paul McStay. Someone brought up Paul McStay, right? I'm trying to find the comment. And they said that I bet he regretted not going to Italy. Now, talking of books, Paul McStay's is a book that I still want to read. Where is it? If you're watching in Australia, Maestro, where's the book? We need the Paul McStay book. But I remember talking to his brother Willie about, the interest as a 17 or 18-year-old. Like, as young as that, he's broken into the Celtic side. Inter Milan wanted him. Juventus wanted him. Atalanta back then wanted him. Clubs from all over the world wanted Paul McStay. He stayed at Celtic for the entirety of his career. And he played through the dark old days. And he retired early due to that ankle injury that he had. And we're going to be talking about that ankle injury with Brian Scott, the physio, on a future episode of This Is Acsom. You know what? I don't think he did regret it. I just think he was Celtic through and through, Chris. He would never have gone anywhere to play football other than Celtic.
Yeah, look, I agree. And it's something that's probably easier for us to say because we've never been in that position as such. But where I think it's more appropriate now to actually stay at Celtic is, look, Celtic still, or even at this point in time, we can pay money that is a life-changing sum of money, right? Nobody's going to go into poverty playing for Celtic nowadays. They're not. I'm sorry, they're just not. None of these guys will ever understand what it's like to be a wee lollipop man out there in all sorts of weather doing that sort of job. Players are now paid, frankly, obscene sums of money, which gives them options that a lot of us will never have. So for a young player, for me, at the outset of his career, and the career, it's a short career, I get that. You want to plan for the future, and I get that as well. And all of us would want more money in our jobs, and we're fortunate that we have jobs and we can get cash. But when it comes to a young player like that who is basically being told by his manager, you're going to be playing for the first team, you're going to be playing at Parkhead in front of 67,000 fans, you're going to be you're going to be pulling on the hoops, you've got the chance to make memories that will last a lifetime and have a legacy. And you look at an example like Murdo McLeod who managed to do that. Why throw that away when the door's not necessarily closed? Now, look, I also appreciate, before someone points out, players can get injured and the career can end. John Kennedy's an example of that, where a Humpty's playing career. But I just think if you're a Celtic fan, what other club makes you feel this way? What other club gives you the chance to be such a hero to our fans and our supporters? It's a biased supporters view, but I can't change it. I would play at Celtic. I would stay at Celtic if it was enough to make me live comfortably and I'm playing at the club I love. That's enough for me. But that's
Do you think?
I'd be divorced by
Of course you would. You'd be on wife number 3, 4. Do you think Kieran Tierney regrets leaving? Because in terms of the mould, Kieran Tierney was a Paul McStay, not the same type of player. He came through. It was his dream. He makes his debut at 17. He is a fan's favourite. We'll love the guy. But he did go. And he went for big money.
But the difference is, he broke through to the team and took his opportunity at the club. He lived the dream of being a Celtic player, and actually coming through and playing cup finals and winning leagues and playing under a great manager and being so hero worshipped by the fans. Then he moved on. That for me is a prime example for the young players. Build your legacy at this club, and then if you want to go on and expand it elsewhere, take the opportunity to do so. But for me, players like Rocco and maybe players like Dan Kelly could go to a club like Watford or another club down south and never make an appearance. They could be the next Islam Feruz or guys like Charlie Masonda, all these young guys who were so heavily lauded and just didn't do it. The Freddie Adu's of the world. Just didn't. Might have made some decent money and living the life, and hey, fair play to them. But they'll never be regarded in the same way that Murdo McLeod or Henrik Larsson or Callum McGregor or Scott Brown will be. And that for me means more. And when going back to a little bit of a shameless plug for This Is Acsom, when I listen to a guy like Murdo McLeod and the pride he's got in what he achieved throughout his career at Celtic and how he is still embracing life and wanting to experience new things, but he looks back with such pride in what he accomplished at Celtic. I want to be like that when I'm Murdo's age and beyond. I want to be able to have those sort of memories. And I tell you, there's no fan base in the world. I don't care. We've spoken about Dortmund and other, even spoken about it with Murdo. There's no other fan base on this planet that will give you a lifelong legacy better than the Celtic fans. Honestly, it just isn't.
The thing that some of the guys we've been privileged enough to meet recently say to me, but which really resonates, I think it was Peter Grant, and it's the old once a Tim, always a Tim thing. He says, once you're a Celtic player, you are always regarded as Peter Grant of Celtic. That's what he says. It doesn't matter if you go and play for Norwich or Bournemouth or you manage or coach, you are Peter Grant Celtic. And that's what you're always, for the rest of the time, going to be regarded as. Listen, it's been a fantastic conversation and we could go on. We absolutely could go on. Do not miss tonight's show, right? The best thing to do is to subscribe to A Celtic State of Mind on YouTube. Every single bit of our content is free. That's never going to change, right? Because, for example, when you're watching tonight's show, if it's the first time you've watched This Is Acsom, it's episode 8, you will realise this is a fully produced show. We need to get a filming team in who obviously film it and edit and light it and the audio and everything else, put it all together, etc. And it's something we're doing every single week. We will never charge for our content because what we try to do is if you want to come and see Acsom live and meet some of your heroes, you can do that on a regular basis with Acsom. Joe Ledley's coming up next week to do a couple of gigs with us. But in terms of content, you get daily content free of charge. And all you need to do is subscribe to the channel and you hit the notifications bell and it will tell you when we're going to go live tonight, 6 o'clock. And that has become part of my routine, my ritual on a Friday night. Take the bairn swimming, come down the road, and then we watch This Is Acsom. Well, I say we watch, he's sitting on his, whatever he's doing, Nintendo Switch. But it will permeate his state of mind eventually. And there we are. It's Murdo McLeod tonight. He starts off talking about his debut for Dumbarton. He finishes off about his journey home from the St Johnstone game where we stopped the 10. It's a tremendous interview. All kudos to Asim and Chris for running it. I was not there. I am no longer needed. I'm on the scrap heap. I'm on the Acsom scrap heap. So everybody get involved and let us know what you think of it. And let us know what you think of Shug's performance tonight. It's all about debate. You don't have to say, you're getting blocked and I'm unsubscribing because he's appearing on your channel. Just watch it. Let us know what you think. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Chris and I will be back 30 minutes before kickoff when Celtic face DC United in the US tour. All that's left for me to say, Brian Degnan, already away back to his work, and Chris McElwain, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.